I suspected my wife's divorce plot, so I had relocated my assets. 2 weeks later, she filed, then withdrew as her scheme failed. My wife tried to blindside me, planning a divorce and aiming to leave me with nothing. But what she didn't know was that I saw it coming, and I had a surprise of my own waiting for her. One that would make her entire plan explode in her face. This isn't just a story about divorce. It's about betrayal, foresight, and the sweet, sweet taste of vindication. Honestly, I never thought I'd be telling a story like this. I've skimmed through countless posts, always thinking, nope, that's not my life. But life, it turns out, has a wicked sense of humor. I've been carrying this for months, and now it's time to let it out. Let me be clear. I'm not the kind of guy who jumps to conclusions or assumes the worst. My wife, let's call her M, and we'd been together for 6 years, married for 4. And things? They were solid, or so I believed. We had our typical ups and downs, sure, but nothing that screamed danger. For most of our relationship, we were that couple, the one everyone joked about being glued at the hip. We had our silly inside jokes, argued for hours over movie choice and just worked. She'd plan elaborate date nights, and I'd bring her favorite takeout after a long day. It felt effortless, like we'd actually figured out the whole love thing. That's why what happened next hit me, like a freight train. About 6 months ago, things began to shift. At first, it was subtle, easy to miss if you weren't paying close attention. She started carrying her phone everywhere. Seriously, even just to the kitchen or to fold laundry. Before this, her phone would just sit on the coffee table for hours, and she wouldn't care who picked it up. One day, I even joked, "What, are you running some secret spy ring now?" She chuckled. "No, work's just emailing me a lot." Okay, fine. But a few days later, a password appeared on her phone. That caught me off guard because she'd never used one. When I casually asked why, she gave some vague answer about security and hackers. I didn't push it. I didn't want to seem paranoid, but it just felt off. And it didn't stop there. She started taking calls outside the room. Not subtly, either. Her phone would ring, and she'd say, "Oh, let me just grab this real quick," before disappearing into the bedroom or stepping out onto the porch. If I asked who it was, she'd simply say, "Just a friend from work." Then I noticed a new habit, keeping her phone face down on the table. I didn't even know that was a thing until I reached over to hand her something, and she hastily moved her phone out of the way. It was one of those blink and you miss it moments, but it etched itself into my mind. But it wasn't just the phone. She started to feel distant. Our conversations, which used to flow so easily, now felt like pulling teeth. If I brought up future plans, where should we go for our anniversary? Or should we start saving for a new car? She'd just nod and say, "Yeah, we'll see," before skillfully changing the subject. Then one random Wednesday it all clicked. She told me she was meeting a friend for coffee after work. Not unusual, she did that sometimes. I happened to be running errands in the same area, so I thought, why not surprise her? It would be cute. But when I arrived, she wasn't with her friend. She was standing outside the cafe, pacing back and forth, her phone pressed to her ear. I stayed in my car because something about her voice seemed serious. I didn't mean to eavesdrop, but I clearly overheard phrases like, "It's almost ready," and "starting fresh soon." My stomach sank. I couldn't figure out what she was talking about, but it didn't sound like a job or a friend conflict. It sounded grander, like something she had meticulously planned. When she came home, I asked how her coffee date went, trying to keep my tone casual. She launched into a full narrative about her friend complaining about her boyfriend. It was such an elaborate, unexpected story that I just stared at her for a second. A few days later, she brought it up again. We were in the kitchen. I was making a sandwich, and she was scrolling on her phone. "Have you thought more about organizing the bank stuff?" she asked. Like, "Do you know where all the account details are?" I slowly lowered the knife and turned to face her. "Okay, what's going on?" I asked, trying to keep my tone light but firm. You've been bringing up finances a lot lately. Is there something we need to talk about? She finally looked up from her phone, startled that I'd pressed her. No, nothing's wrong, she responded, almost too quickly, making me giggle. I just think it's important, that's all. You know, for emergencies. Emergencies like what? I probed. She shrugged, her expression unreadable. I don't know, just life stuff. It's not a big deal, I promise. I just think it's something we should get on top of. Her response felt vague, too rehearsed. I nodded and let it go, but the way she avoided a direct answer made me even more suspicious. It didn't seem like a casual suggestion anymore. It felt like she was hiding something. But what? So, the next day, while she was at work, I decided to take a look at our finances. I logged into our joint account online and found something unsettling. Over the last month, there had been a few small transfers. Nothing huge, but tiny amounts that didn't have a clear purpose. They weren't for bills, groceries, or anything I recognized. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but it looked like she'd been siphoning money from the account for some reason I couldn't fathom. I considered confronting her, but something told me to wait. If I was wrong, I'd look ridiculous. If I was right, I needed to be careful. This was eating at me, so I called someone I trusted, an old college friend who happens to be a lawyer. I told him everything, trying not to sound like a conspiracy theorist. Look, he said after I'd explained it all. I'm not saying something is definitely going on, but you're not crazy for wanting to be prepared. If you're concerned about protecting your assets, now's the time to do it. Better safe than sorry. He walked me through what I could do. Simple steps to secure my finances if things went south. I'll admit, taking such drastic action felt unnatural. It felt like I was preparing for something dreadful, even though I still wasn't sure what was wrong. But the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. If she was up to something, and my gut was screaming that she was, I needed to defend myself. It wasn't an easy decision. This wasn't just about money, it was about the life we had built. Images kept flashing in my mind. Our wedding day, late-night talks about our dreams, the silly jokes we shared. How did we get here? Was this what our marriage had become? The very idea of taking these measures felt like conceding defeat, like I was officially giving up on the trust we once shared. That evening, while she was out, I sat at my desk and pulled out my laptop. My hand shook as I opened the computer and started browsing through everything. Bank accounts, investment accounts, the property deed. Each document I reviewed felt like a betrayal, but a persistent voice in my head kept reminding me, this is about survival, not sabotage. I wasn't trying to hurt her. I just couldn't shake the feeling that if I didn't act now, I'd regret it forever. I compiled a list of everything I could transfer and how to do it without raising suspicion. As I typed, a crushing weight settled on my chest. I had trusted her completely for years, and now here I was, playing defense against the person I thought would always have my back. Then I called my mother. I explained why I needed her help, but not in detail. Mom, I said, I need you to hold on to some things for me for a while. It's nothing bad, just something I need to do to protect myself, just in case. She was silent for a minute, probably trying to figure out what I wasn't saying. Are you okay? Her voice was filled with anxiety. Yeah, I lied. It's just a precaution, nothing to worry about. She didn't press me, but I could hear the pause in her voice when she finally responded. Of course, sweetheart. Whatever you need. I hung up with an odd mix of relief and shame. I hated dragging her into this mess, but knowing I had her support provided a sliver of steadiness in an otherwise chaotic situation. By the time Em arrived home, I had already begun the process. I moved the majority of my assets, our cash, investments, even the house, into my mother's name. I kept just enough in our joint account to keep up appearances, but the rest was locked down tight. She didn't notice a thing. She walked in, kissed my cheek, and asked if I wanted to watch a movie. I appeared calm, but inside I was a wreck. Part of me felt awful, like I'd betrayed her trust. But another part of me felt a wave of relief, like I was finally gaining control of a situation that had spiraled out of my hands. Over the next 3 days, I tried to maintain a normal routine. I didn't want her to suspect anything had changed. She seemed content, even unusually cheery at times. However, rather than putting me at ease, it only increased my suspicion. If she was plotting something, she was doing an excellent job of concealing it. What really stood out, though, was that she never brought up the finances again. Not even after I had questioned her last time. It was as if the subject had evaporated from her memory. At first, I thought maybe I had overreacted and she'd dismissed the topic because it wasn't relevant. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized she was avoiding it, almost as if she was afraid to bring it up again after I'd pressed her. I noticed her staring at me a few times, too, as if assessing my mood or contemplating whether to say something. Every time I caught her, she'd quickly avert her gaze back to whatever she was doing, her phone, the TV, a book. It was subtle, but it was there. It felt like she was waiting for me to bring it up, as if she didn't want to push the issue again. The silence only made me more anxious. It wasn't like her to drop something she considered essential, and the way she avoided it suddenly appeared deliberate. If she was testing the waters, she wasn't diving in. If she was waiting for something, I wasn't about to give her the go-ahead. Whatever her next move was, I knew I had to be one step ahead. Something was coming, but I didn't know when or how. All I could do was prepare. That night, I made sure everything was solid. I reviewed the paperwork again, double-checking every aspect of the asset transfers to my mother. The house, the savings, the investments. Everything was now legally in her name, sealed in an uncontested trust. I even called her to confirm she had all the necessary papers. 2 weeks passed, and everything seemed normal. Too normal, frankly. She was acting more loving, even starting to talk about unrelated things like jobs or what we should have for dinner. It threw me off because she'd been so aloof for months, avoiding anything more than superficial conversations. A part of me began to question whether I had been overreacting all along. Maybe her strange behavior was just stress or something I didn't understand. But then, one random Friday night, she sat me down on the couch, turned off the television, and said, "We need to talk." My stomach dropped. I knew exactly what she was going to say before she did. "I think we should get a divorce," she announced, her voice so calm it sounded rehearsed. It wasn't angry or emotional. It was simply frigid, like she was telling me we'd run out of milk. I just stared at her, unsure how to respond. As she explained her reasoning, she talked about needing space, wanting to figure herself out, and feeling like she'd lost her identity in the marriage. Standard breakup phrases that didn't really explain anything. But then she said something that struck a different chord. "You know, I've made a lot of sacrifices for you over the years, and I don't think you really appreciate them. I deserve more." That last part stung. It wasn't just that she wanted out. It was that she framed it as if I owed her something, as if everything was my fault and she was simply claiming what was rightfully hers. As I sat there, trying to process what she was saying, a new question arose. Why now? Then she said something that made everything begin to make sense. "A friend of mine has been helping me see things more clearly," she continued, not looking at me. A friend. I remained still, letting her speak, but my mind was racing. Who was this friend? Why were they so involved in my marriage? The way she said it wasn't casual. It seemed like someone had been hyping her up, convincing her that leaving me wasn't just a choice, but a strategy she needed to implement. And the more she talked about how she deserved more because of her sacrifices, the more skeptical I became. Sacrifices? What kind of sacrifices? She was happy with me, or so she said. I worked hard to give her the life she wanted. And it wasn't just about money. When she asked to move closer to her job, I agreed, even though it meant a longer commute for me. When she wanted to attend that pricey yoga retreat last year, I made sure we budgeted for it, even foregoing a vacation I was looking forward to, just so she could go. I backed her when she changed careers twice, telling her it was fine to take the risk because I wanted her happy. I genuinely believed being a good husband meant putting her first, whenever possible. And it wasn't as if I was some unresponsive, distant partner. I showed up. I remembered birthdays and random things she'd mentioned loving. When she felt caught in a rut, I suggested date nights. I listened to her complain about her job, friends, and family. I didn't always get it right, but I did try. That's why her "I deserve more" line hurt so much. I didn't even consider buying it. She wasn't upset because of anything I did or didn't do. She was upset because something had changed in her. Perhaps it was this acquaintance she kept bringing up, or something else entirely. But the woman sitting in front of me was not the woman I married, and I was not about to let her rewrite our marriage tale to fit her new narrative. I didn't press her in that moment. Instead, I simply nodded and said something innocuous like, "If that's how you feel, I guess we should figure out the next steps." She seemed startled that I wasn't arguing or begging her to stay. But I didn't mind. My attention had already shifted. I needed to know who or what was causing her sudden, planned shift in conduct. She didn't just wake up one day and decide she wanted out. This was something bigger, and I wasn't going to let it surprise me any more than it already had. After that chat, she retreated to her own apartment, and then on Monday morning, the divorce papers arrived. Let me tell you, they didn't just want to end the relationship. They were planning to take everything. Half the house, my savings, my assets, the car. She wanted it all, plus some ambiguous spousal support clauses that made little sense given her high salary. It was clear she expected me to just hand over everything I'd worked for. At first, I assumed she was just being vengeful. But the way her demands were articulated, so specific, so aggressive, reassured me that someone was guiding her through this. So I started digging. I couldn't just ask her who she'd been talking to, so I had to be clever. I started with her social media. She hadn't blocked me, and even though she didn't post frequently, I searched through her tag photos and comments, looking for someone new. That's when I spotted the pattern. Jake! He repeatedly liked and commented on her posts. Nothing obscene, but enough to make me pause. I clicked on his profile, which was public. At first glance, he didn't seem like much more than a 30-something marketing professional. But as I scrolled down, I spotted something unusual. He'd posted a photo at the same cafe I'd seen her weeks before. On the same day, I overheard her discussing starting fresh. My gut churned. As I continued scrolling, more subtle signals emerged. A comment on one of her pictures that read, "You've got this," and a selfie he'd taken from what appeared to be her new residence. None of it was hard evidence, but it was enough to solidify my suspicion. I wasn't sure what to do with this information, but I knew I couldn't just sit there and wait for answers to come to me. Her statement about a friend who helped her get through things kept gnawing at me, and I needed to know who it was. I decided to contact one of our mutual acquaintances, Lisa. She and my wife had been friends for years, so she'd know what was going on. I kept the conversation light at first, asking if she'd spoken with my wife lately or if anything seemed strange. Lisa reacted swiftly, saying she had no idea about any friend or any suggestions. I asked a few more probing questions, but she cut the conversation off defensively, claiming she couldn't help me. The entire situation felt rushed, as if she was trying to avoid getting involved. Not willing to give up, I called another friend, Emily. I followed the same pattern, stating that I was just trying to make sense of things. She was apprehensive at first, responding vaguely to my questions. When I pressed her more, she quickly ended the call, leaving me even more skeptical than before. I sat there, frustrated, trying to figure out my next move. Then, to my astonishment, Emily called back. She told me she needed to make sure what she said didn't come back to her. I assured her it wouldn't. After a long pause, she revealed what she knew. Apparently, my wife had been spending a lot of time with someone named Jake, whom she had met at work. Emily claimed she didn't know much else, but from what she'd heard, Jake was very active in the divorce advice my wife was receiving. Hearing that name felt like a puzzle piece clicking into place. It was clear that this was more than just her need for space or to find herself. Someone else was in the picture, directing her decisions, and I was eager to discover why. I decided to confront it in my own way. That Saturday, I drove to her apartment building and parked a block away, just trying to confirm what I already suspected. A few hours later, she and Jake stepped out of the building. They weren't holding hands or anything, but the way they walked together, close, leaning in to talk, was enough. They got into his car and drove away, leaving me sitting there, staring at the spot where they had been. I didn't follow them. I didn't need to. At that point, it was obvious. She hadn't simply stopped loving me. She'd been preparing to leave with someone else. And now, everything made sense. The unexpected distancing, the money questions, the aggressive demands, the divorce papers. She wasn't simply abandoning me. She was leaving me with nothing. And she was accompanied by someone at all times. I went home that night, my head racing with everything I'd learned. The betrayal burned, but what hurt the most was how premeditated everything was. She was using the divorce as a stepping stone to whatever life she was creating with Jake. But she had no idea what I had planned for her. The first mediation session felt strained from the moment we stepped in. Her lawyer arrived with a binder so thick it looked like they were bringing a case against a Fortune 500 firm. He began listing her demands as if they were entirely reasonable. Half the house, the money, my assets, the car, and even some gibberish about spousal support. I remained silent, appearing to listen, but I was waiting for my attorney to make his move. When it was finally our turn, he calmly handed a stack of paperwork across the table. "Before we proceed," he said, "I think it's important for everyone to review these." Her lawyer took the papers and skimmed through them. His confident posture changed fast as he flipped through the pages, his brow furrowing harder with each one. "What is this?" he inquired, gazing at my lawyer. "These documents show the transfer of all major assets into a trust under my client's mother's name," my lawyer said calmly. "The transfers were completed several weeks before the divorce filing, and the trust is fully legal and irrevocable." The room became utterly silent. Her lawyer looked at her, confused and frustrated. "You didn't mention this," he stated flatly. She snatched the papers from his hands and flipped through them, her face flushing crimson. "This can't be real," she gasped, staring at the notarized signatures and dates. Then, she turned to me, her countenance changing from incredulity to pure rage. "You planned this," she muttered, gazing at me as if I'd committed a heinous crime. "You knew I was going to file, and you set this up to screw me over." I did not respond. I just sat there and let her connect the dots on her own. Her lawyer, visibly agitated, requested my counsel to elaborate. So he did, slowly, deliberately, and with every piece of evidence necessary to make the transfers irrefutable. The dates aligned exactly, indicating that I had transferred everything well before she filed. The signatures were duly notarized and the trust was solid. There was nothing they could do to challenge it. She was furious. "You're unbelievable," she practically hissed, leaning forward in her chair. "I can't believe you'd do something like this to me." I still didn't say anything. What was there to say? This wasn't about me doing anything to her. This was about defending myself because she had made it apparent she was not going quietly. The conference finished with her lawyer saying something about needing to rethink their strategy, but everyone in the room knew they had no further moves to make. When we walked out of the building, she pulled me aside in the hallway, her expression a mix of rage and desperation. "This isn't over," she spat, her tone low. "You're going to regret this." I just looked at her and said, "I already regret trusting you. That's the only regret I have." Things escalated faster than I had anticipated following the mediation session. She went into complete meltdown mode almost instantly. It began with the calls, endless calls. At first, she sounded calm, even remorseful, leaving voicemails that began, "I think we just need to talk," or "I know this got messy, but we can fix it." When I didn't answer, the tone changed. By the second day, her messages alternated between sobbing and screaming. One voicemail would be her lamenting about making a mistake and not wanting to lose what we had created together. Then she'd launch into a furious tirade, accusing me of being stingy and cruel, blaming me for everything that was wrong in her life. I ignored it all. My lawyer told me not to engage, and honestly, I didn't want to. I was finished playing her games. But she wasn't. When the calls and texts didn't work, she started telling stories. Mutual friends informed me that she had been telling people the divorce was a hoax, and that it was all part of a larger farce, a prank. I mean, who would believe that? The flaws in her story quickly became apparent. Friends began to ask questions like, if it was a prank, why did you file actual legal paperwork? Or why hire a lawyer and make such specific demands if it wasn't serious? When others didn't instantly accept the hoax justification, she doubled down. She claimed it was not a joke, but rather a test of our relationship strength. She began casting herself as the victim, claiming that my reaction had hurt and betrayed her, that I had gone too far and broken our marriage's trust. At first, some people seemed to believe her stories. I'd get strange emails or comments from acquaintances, like, "Wow, I didn't realize things were so rough for her." Even her brother lashed out, saying, "You should have just talked it out instead of being so drastic." It was annoying, but I knew the truth would eventually come out. And it did. Thanks to a common buddy, let's call him Matt. Matt and I weren't particularly close, but we had always been nice to each other. A few weeks after the mediation, he messaged me unexpectedly, saying he had something I needed to see. When we met, he brought out his phone and showed me a series of text messages between her and Jake. I was confused at first. "How did you even get these?" I inquired, scanning through the messages. Matt revealed that he and Jake shared a mutual friend who had overheard their talks. Apparently, this common acquaintance had grown concerned about the way things were going, especially when Jake began gloating about how he was assisting her in securing her future. It didn't take long for that common buddy to figure out what securing her future really meant, trying to bleed me dry. Feeling awful about remaining silent, the buddy grabbed screenshots of the texts and sent them to Matt, believing he had a better relationship with me and could warn me. "This guy's been playing both sides," Matt replied, shaking his head. "He's been hyping her up to take you for everything while making her believe he'd be there for her afterward." Matt handed me the phone. "I thought you should know. You don't deserve this, man." The texts were terrible. She wasn't just ranting to Jake about the divorce. She was actively planning her future steps with him, and he was guiding her through them. A message she left read, "Once the settlement's done, we'll have everything we need. I just need him to agree to the terms." Jake responded, "Don't back down. Make him feel guilty if you have to. He owes you. We'll start fresh once you've got the money." I sat there, staring at Matt's phone, trying to comprehend what I was reading. This was neither a misunderstanding nor an emotional response to a failed marriage. This was cold, deliberate manipulation. I thanked Matt, and he left, but my thoughts were racing. Everything made sense now. Her abrupt isolation, her fixation with our finances, her harsh demands throughout the divorce. It was all part of a plan, one she had been developing with Jake behind the scenes. The texts soon circulated among our mutual friends. Matt shared them with a few trusted people, and they quickly spread. Her story suddenly ceased to be credible. People who had previously been indifferent or even supportive of her began to distance themselves. The change was almost immediate. People who had previously defended her or remained neutral suddenly recognized her for who she truly was. Even her closest allies started to distance themselves. By the time the divorce was finalized, she had only her personal things. Her lawyer quietly dismissed her complaint after recognizing there was no legal basis to stand on. All of those bold requests had crumbled under the weight of the documents I had produced, and the trust one had established with my mother was unbreakable. Jake seemed to vanish as soon as things began to unravel. I wouldn't be surprised if he used her as much as she did me. From what I could tell, he'd been feeding her fantasies of independence and a new beginning. But the moment it became evident she wasn't walking away with anything substantial, he was gone. Without Jake in her corner, her confidence plummeted. The calls and texts continued, but they became increasingly desperate. She wasn't accusing me anymore. She begged. "Can we just talk, please? I'll do anything to fix this," one voicemail stated. Another, "You don't have to forgive me, but can't we just settle this and move on? I'll drop everything if you just talk to me." I did not respond. I couldn't. It was too late to reverse the harm. Even her family began to drift away. Her brother contacted me at one point, apologizing for some of the things he had said before when he believed her side of the story. "I didn't know what she was doing to you," he said. "I'm sorry I ever took her word for it." As for me, I received the house, my savings, and something I hadn't experienced in a long time, peace of mind. My mother, as usual, was my rock. She arrived with buckets of paint and a list of suggestions to help me reclaim the space as mine. Now life feels like it's mine again. No more second-guessing every small interaction. No longer feeling betrayed. Just peace. She is a chapter from my history that I no longer read, and the rest of the story is entirely up to me to write.